Well, welcome everyone to our Leadership Academy Managing Complex Programs and Projects. This is our first in the Leadership Academy panel series for this year. And so we welcome you, and hopefully you will be able to get some really fruitful information in our conversation today with our panelists. My name is Indira Gagnon, and I am a training advisor here with Regional Government Services, and will be your facilitator today for this session. And I'm going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. We have a breadth of information, a wealth of information here from our guests. And so you will have an opportunity to ask questions through our question and answer feature at the end here. And hopefully we're able to get through many of those questions. But if not, please, we encourage you to put into the question and answer area those questions that you have for our panelists. I also do encourage you to put in your chat now what agency or city or locality you are coming from. So it gives our panelists some perspective on what our attendees, what our participants look like here. So let's start with Janelle Cameron. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janelle Cameron. I am the Assistant City Manager with the wonderful city of San Leandro. I have been in this role for the past 2 years, 2 to 3/4 years. This summer it'll be 3 years. I have been in local government since 2008. Prior to that, I was in the private sector. My background is in accounting and finance. And I started my career in local government with the Central Contra Costa Solid Waste Authority, where I was the finance manager controller, and I held that position there for about 10 years. And then in 2018, I came over to the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District, where I was Administrative Services Director, working on a host of different projects in different areas. And in 2021, came over here to San Leandro. So I'm so happy to be with you all today, and can't wait to hear the questions.
Thank you, Janelle. Missy.
Hi there, I'm Missy Pieri. Official name is Melissa, but I go by Missy. Missy Pieri, Director of Engineering of the Citrus Heights Water District. The water district's located in the Sacramento and Placer County area. I oversee the district's capital improvement program, including water main replacement, our groundwater wells, private development. I also work on a lot of planning level programs and various special projects. I've been with the district for about 11, 12 years now. And then prior to working for the district, I worked for a private engineering firm, SOMAS, for 16 years, where I did water and wastewater planning and design type work.
Thank you so much, Missy. And finally, Don.
Hi, thank you. My name is Don Reynolds. I've been in the public sector now since 1989, 1990. Master's of Public Administration degree from Cal State Northridge in 1994. I spent my first 12 years working for the new city of Moore Park, which incorporated in 1984. I was their 7th employee. When I left, there were 47 employees. I came to Salinas, where I was in various departments, HR, redevelopment, then public works. And currently, for the last 5 years, I've been city manager of San Juan Bautista.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for those introductions. As you know, working in the agencies and the sectors that you have, there are many challenges, many constraints, really, that go into putting projects together, putting programs together, really gaining good understanding of what your agency needs are and what the communities require. And so we'll go through a series of questions that will challenge you to really think about those areas that you've managed and some of the complexities in what it took to either make those areas a success, or perhaps there were some unique challenges that turned you in a different direction. Starting with Janelle, has there been a program or a project that you've managed that where you found that there was some unique set of challenges too?
I love this question because I feel like that's what I do. That's the job I have, and I joke with our city manager that I feel like from agency to agency I go to, they have their challenges, and maybe that's just my gift, is to go from one place to deal with challenges, and that's kind of what my role is. But when I thought about this, it was kind of difficult for me because some of the ones that stuck out were ones that I'm not sure if I could give the full story in this type of setting, because so much of it is in a confidential space that really is complex. And so I had to say, what can I think about that's really complex? But I can freely share kind of all aspects of it. And so the one that stuck out to me was when I was the lead negotiator for the Central Contra Costa Solid Waste Authority, and we were negotiating a 10-year garbage franchise. And so for you who don't know what the Solid Waste Authority is, a joint powers authority that has 6 member agencies. So 5 of them are cities and 1 is the county. And they have a board of 12 elected, so 2 from each of the individual agencies. So there's a big political body, extremely intelligent elected officials. I think at that time, out of 12, 7 of my electeds were attorneys. So extremely smart, know contracts very well. So if you're gonna stand in front of them, you better have it together, because they had thoughts. And with supporting a JPA versus a single city, every agency has their own needs and wants. And so you have to really work with not only the electeds, you have to work with the community, you have to work with city staff, city managers, city attorneys, finance directors, public works directors. And so that project had a lot of stakeholders in it. And it was basically a three-year project from, I mean, you could even say 4. And I say that because the years had phases of knowing where we were going. So the first year was really looking at the current contract we had and looking at all the things that we needed to fix and get right, and start making those lists every day, starting to track the things that we needed to make sure we either didn't repeat in the next contract or that we included in the next contract. That second year was really working heavily with all of the different stakeholders, and making sure that we had capacity to take that on. And so that comes from making sure that staff capacity. So if we had to find, staff to come in and support, for example, myself, someone to help do the day-to-day work I need to do so that I can be focused somewhere else. Bringing in consultants was really important, and qualified consultants, because there's consultants who they say they're able to do the work, but with something that political and that valuable, you want to make sure that you have the best support you can get. Legal, making sure that your attorneys have the capacity to focus on this, because sometimes I've run into situations where our attorneys are spread a little thin and they're unable to focus, but something like this, we need them all the time. And then even your electeds, making sure that they have capacity to focus. So we created an ad hoc committee so that we could quickly have meetings and have discussions, and did not have to go through the Brown Act of the meeting agendas and all of that, because it needed to move quickly at times. There were times we were meeting once a week or having to meet multiple times a week with some of our electeds. So that was really important. And then the contracting phase, from RFP to contract to, which includes a lot of public comment. I remember I'd really get lucky if my meetings ended the same day. That would be the goal. And these are meetings that we'd start at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And like, if I could just get home in the same day, it would be great. But that process took a good year and a half to get through, and deciding exactly what we're going to contract and who and how we're going to divide it up. But then also, once you have the agreement, it's getting it set up. And a lot of things can go wrong. And I'd say one of the things that was really important for us to do through the entire process is to talk about what can go wrong. I know I've worked on projects where sometimes people like to focus on the positive, and especially in the political space, it'll be important to politically in the public eye not to say too many negative things. And sometimes people want to put a positive spin on things. But as staff, it is very, very important for us to not get so lost in that, and to make sure we are looking for the holes and what can go wrong. And you need a Debbie Downer in the room to focus on that, because what you don't want are surprises. You don't want to not be prepared for how this can go left in a council meeting or some type of public forum. You want to have a response for that. And in a space that is extremely public, and I don't know how many of you have experience with garbage, but garbage, it has a legacy of being extremely political. It's a space where you can get in a lot of trouble. And making sure that you as staff avoid it and stay focused on what your goal is, and not let outside entities sway you from doing the right thing. But it was extremely complex, and it had many moving pieces and many moving parts. And even when we thought we had it all right and it was all good and the contracts were done and the new service provider was going to start, we had cities that didn't have garbage cans, or the garbage cans didn't get picked up. And so it was this constant thing of making sure that it went right, to the point where, even as a finance manager controller, it was like, am I going to go out there and have to deliver bins? Like, it was kind of all hands on deck type of situation. And so it's always being nimble, and never just sitting back and relaxing and being like, oh, it's going to work itself out. Just being prepared, and knowing that going into it, that you have to be prepared for the unknown, because there will always be something unknown, and being extremely flexible. And I will say, having humor in it all, because sometimes all you can do is laugh at the crazy. And if you take it too seriously, you stress yourself out, give yourself a heart attack. So it's very important to have a great team that you can laugh at some of it and just keep on going.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Yes, having laughter, especially when there are so many moving parts, when things are complicated, and especially when there's this political arena to it, right? We always want to make sure that our electeds are able to see that we're not just trying to get the job done, but we also are providing services to those that are necessary. And we want to do that in a way that is not just fiscally efficient, but also proficient. And with all of those moving parts and all of the stakeholders that are involved and invested, Missy, how have you been able to get through a project or program when there are so many variables, from the many stakeholders all the way to that political arena?
It's a good question. We have several projects. Just to kind of circle back, I work for a water district, so all we do is provide water to customers, and we are 95% ratepayer funded, so we don't get outside money from property tax. It's basically from the customer's water bill. And so anytime where we have to spend more money than we are currently bringing in, we have to raise rates, or find a way to produce that revenue. So one thing we have done is we have employed a customer advisory committee. We established that recently, so we can really get the input from our customers, and even kind of vet like some of the issues that may be questioned by our customers. We can kind of vet that through our CAC. So the CAC has worked with us closely on a lot of our projects, and it's really helped us move our projects forward. They're kind of an extra voice out in the community, and they are really good at, if they believe in it, and usually they do, because it's a good reason to do a lot of our projects. They support our projects, and then we get that community support, and it's been great. And then they're also able to attend the board meetings and provide that support or their recommendation to our board members. So our board feels that level of confidence to move forward with the project, knowing that, you know, a lot of our customers have already been involved in the process.
Is there one particular project that sticks out for you that that was particularly challenging in the course of your career?
Yeah, we about 3 to 4 years ago, we wanted to really look at our water main replacement program, because we're over 100-year-old agency, and a lot of our development occurred between the 1960-1985 period. That's where a lot of our water mains were installed. And so a life of a water main is about 70 years. So we were foreseeing, you know, come the year 2030, hey, we're going to have to start replacing a lot of water mains. And how are we going to be able to do that? So that's when we employed the CAC to be a part of this project. It was like a 2-year project where we had multiple meetings with them. We looked at various alternatives along with our consultants. We had financial consultants and engineering consultants, and we presented all the different alternatives. And so they were able to assist us in selecting a replacement program that would it would work, you know, technically, but it would also work in the public eye. And so with this project, actually, the board ended up approving a dedicated charge to our water bill. So we have like a $10 a month or bi-monthly charge now on our water bill that is solely for water main replacement. So we're like pre-funding. We're kind of saving money now for work we foresee in the coming future. And that was all because of the CAC's involvement and really getting that whole team together to come up with this approach. I think it worked really well.
Thank you. So there are many times when projects don't go so well, right? You have tried to adopt, you know, whatever best practices, you've tried to adapt and adjust, get everyone on board, and they just aren't seeming to go your way. Dawn, you have had a lot of experience in many different spaces, and you know, even with putting together an entirely new organization. What has your experience been with some of the complexities in projects that may not have gone quite as planned?
Thank you. Right. Of course, all my projects went as planned. That's why I have a job. No. You know, I'll never forget, we were planning our new police station, 72,000 square feet, $52 million. And the community development director had a fit about the palm trees in the front of the building. And I'm like, you're supposed to be on my side. You know, I was working in public works at the time. I was the acting public works director. So she marched me right out to the street festival, Ciclavia, we call it. And we did all kinds of public outreach for a day. And we put pictures of our police station out there. And we changed them proudly to sycamores and native species. You know, things don't always go your way, but you keep a positive attitude and you believe in your project. And maybe it's a detail like those trees that make it hard. But in the end, you have a simple message that you believe in, that you're authentic about, and you carry it through. And that confidence and that trust has a lot to do with the success of a project. Now, if something doesn't go your way, it probably means a delay and hopefully not cancellation. And, you know, I've got a $15 million water project that we're talking to the legislators about helping fund. We were in Sacramento last Thursday with the city council members. I got an email at 9 o'clock last night telling me that the executive director, the general manager of the water district, has been fired. He's been my partner for 4 years. talk about things changing that are out of your control and maintaining confidence. We are in the middle now of an $18 million sewer line project to Hollister, and we have survived 3 city managers and 2 elections. These are things that are out of our control, and so someone has to be there carrying the flag and carrying the positive message. So these projects, I was also thinking about complex projects and how they all begin. And we used to have like a war room in Salinas Public Works, and my boss and I would get together and we'd just start drawing circles on the whiteboard. We had a lot to do with homelessness 10 years ago, and there's so many complicated pieces to that issue. That we just started drawing circles and agencies and stakeholders, and it looked like this giant they looked like a little kid's different colored markers, and it just looked like craziness, and only he and I understood it. But that had all the different ingredients that we then formed into a project where we had clear objectives, where we could finance it, where we could move forward. So that's been great. And then one I think it was already mentioned how you have to have the support of the stakeholders. With this water project, we had raised the rates. And it wasn't until we were successful raising the rates did Senator Caballero begin to believe that the city was going to have skin in the game. And so in the budget for 2022, we got $3 million award thanks to her and the Speaker of the House Rivas's support. And that $3 million went a long way. Wound up with $16 million from the USDA. And when the bids came in, they were $2 million high. And we raised the rates enough to pay the debt service. So we needed another $2 million grant, or we had to value engineer our project. And at the last minute, the USDA came to the plate. They found some change in the couch. So we got another $2 million grant for you. I didn't know that was even possible. And so having that belief and having a good team and having confidence with your stakeholders. And so think of the complexity. We have EPA, we have Water Board, we have USDA, we have the ratepayers. That's just the funding sources for this project, let alone the salamanders and the frogs and all the other details that you need to worry about. So boy, project management is a key to my career. And it started, my very first project as an intern, $8 an hour, was buying chairs for the city council. That was the most complicated project. I had a city council member who was 84 years old. She was adorable. She was awesome. I also had a guy named Wozniak who was like 6'4", and I had to buy the same chair for all of them. Anyway, I could go on forever, so I'll pause and let someone else have a chance.
I appreciate that. You mentioned, the many stakeholders that you had to work with and getting their buy-in. But what about those programs and those projects where the leadership have an envisioned idea of what things should be looking like, and you are tasked with implementing their vision in a way that makes sense? Janelle, can you speak to what your experience has been putting somebody else's vision into play?
Yeah, I've definitely had to do that a few times, but I think what the way I try to do it best is really trying to focus on what the end goal is and finding commonality and a common goal in that. And so when leadership, sometimes they may get into the weeds of where they want to go, and it's the communication and developing where are we going allows myself and the teams that I work with freedom to get there and how we get there. Because sometimes I've had experiences where leadership or electeds may want to get in the weeds of how, when it's really important to lean on the subject matter experts in this space. Even myself as ACM, there are a lot of things I don't know, or a lot of things I think I do know, but it's important for me to listen to the people around me to make sure that one, they have the freedom to disagree with me. I love, we talk about debate and decide here in Radical Candor. And it's okay to tell me, Janelle, you sound absolutely insane. That's not going to work. And so I always try to be the leader that I wanted when I was coming up in my career, to be one who listens to those who are in charge or those who are providing the direction. But I will say that it's just important for constant communication. So even now with our our council, as we have our goal setting for the year, we make sure that we do updates with them, whether it be quarterly or mid-year updates with them on the progress on them. We set clear expectations on timelines from the beginning so that there's no confusion or they think something will be done in 6 months and we're like, it's going to take 6 years. All of the things that are necessary. Also, when it comes to competing priorities, it's being clear of the capacity. You know, the staff is not unlimited, resources are not unlimited. And so sometimes you can't do it all. And the answer may not be no, it may be just right now. Or it's, okay, if you want this other thing to happen, we've got to give something else up that you have been working on. And what is that priority? So it's just really important to be in communication. And then once everything's clear and there's becomes agreement, then the marching orders and how you implement all of it is pretty easy at that point, or pretty clear at that point.
Thank you. And you think that, you know, projecting someone else's vision is, you know, something that's achievable, attainable, especially if there's a strategic plan in place and everyone's on the same playing field. But Missy, going to you, you know, working in a special district like water seems pretty linear on the face, right? But I'm sure there are a lot of nuances and there are folks that you have to answer to, and they may have ideas much differently than what you can actually perform.
Yeah, I'm just kind of laughing because you know, a lot of my work is technical engineering related. So I think I'm an engineer, so I like the steps involved, and I, you know, go step by step. And my boss, the general manager, he has claimed this, so I'm not saying this without his knowledge, but he claims he's just a liberal arts major, you know, and so he doesn't really understand the engineering, but he really is more of a big picture thinker. And so whenever we're talking projects, he comes up with these, I'm just going to say, crazy ideas. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, you know, it's like, I just want to understand the steps involved. And he's like talking about communications. We got to, you know, do social media posts on this and that. And I'm just like, I just want to get pipe in the ground, you know? And so his vision sometimes for a project is a lot different. Like he wants to get everyone involved. You know, obviously he needs to get like the financial folks involved to understand the cost implications. And again, you know, I'm more focused on, you know, just the technical aspect. So it's been interesting to work with all those other facets. And one thing I found that has worked for us is, you know, it does take longer to do this, but we get all the stakeholders involved. We'll get our communications and public engagement staff involved in meetings that sometimes I'm like, why are they even in this meeting? But I think it is good for them to listen to some of the discussions that are being had, because then they're able to tell the story a little bit easier by hearing all the issues involved, whereas you probably wouldn't get that if you were just having like a, oh, we're going to talk to them later type of a meeting. So I guess to circle back is to really, I think, have those big group meetings where you get this, all the other agencies and departments, I guess, departments involved, finance, social media, communications, even your legal, obviously involved. So you can really understand the project and get everyone's input.
Thank you. Dawn, what about you? You know, trying to put an entire city, I know we had a conversation previously about your building of a new locale and, you know, placing new leadership in place. And so you may be taking direction directly from electeds or from the community even. What has been your experience in putting someone else's vision into that?
Right. So before my contract was approved in San Juan Bautista, the EPA and Water Board came and inspected our wastewater facility. And I started July 2nd. By October, we had a letter clearly explaining their vision for our wastewater treatment plant. I was fortunate to meet with the prior city engineer before my job interview. And I told the city that they do a great job attracting tourists. They have one of the most beautiful missions for fourth graders pouring into our city every day, except for COVID. But they have this wastewater treatment plant that has at least 12 red flags in a study that it could fail any minute. And 3 of the council members didn't know that. So here I was carrying this vision to a job interview, and the council member was not aware that they were in such a fragile place. And so that became my marching orders. That became our shared vision. Then my vision, when they hired me, said, yes, please get to work right away. And so that's why we're closing down our wastewater treatment plant and sending our wastewater to Hollister for treatment. But there again, the wastewater treatment plant in Hollister is in a district that does not want to see an expansion of the wastewater plant because it doesn't smell good and it's going to ruin their neighborhood. And this isn't the city's jurisdiction. This is the city of Hollister and their council. So more unpredictable visions, more visions that don't agree. In our business, we need a 3 to 5 or a 4 to 3. That's all we need to get the project, to get the ball rolling. And I try and keep that in mind to help me through those tough times. The 40-year contract for Hollister was awarded during a trip to New Orleans last summer, where my son was competing in the National Gymnastics Tournament. And there I am in the Airbnb on their Zoom meeting, trying to get them to buy into this 40-year agreement. I mean, you know, the things we do to get a majority, we do. It's just somebody has to do it. And in our city, I'm that someone. So I don't know. It's not easy, but it's rewarding.
Part of the challenges of serving in a leadership role and trying to maintain the peace amongst all, right? There's a really fine line with straddling, making sure that things get done and making sure that people get heard. And definitely is that straddling going on. And with that, you mentioned you know, your communication with all of the stakeholders at all different levels and giving them an opportunity publicly to do that. What would be your how you would invite others to in a broad range of understanding, how would you invite others to understand what your vision is? What you are looking for moving forward for making a project success or program success?
That's for me?
That's for you, Don. Yes.
First and foremost, it starts with my evaluation. Even if the council doesn't want to take the time to do it, I want to sit in closed session at the city manager's evaluation, say, this is my vision and this is what I think your priority should be. Let's talk about your concurrence or disagreement with that. And then it was mentioned earlier that in our budget session, we have a budget cadence. So we go from July 1, and then we close our books, and we have our audit in December, our mid-year budget review in January, February, and then we have goal setting. And now we're going to put money towards those goals, right, in the next couple months. And so I get the council accustomed to that goal setting. But I tried to set up a weekend, Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, to review our strategic plan with them, and they didn't want to meet. They didn't want to talk about it. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just make something up then, and we'll see what happens. Our marching orders are pretty straightforward now. Having been there 5 years, we're pretty much on the same page, but you just never know what to expect. This is the first community I've worked for that feels like we meet too much. And you know, during COVID was a blessing for the water projects because we had 39 special city council meetings in addition to the 12 regular meetings. And so we always had a reason to put water on the agenda as we were talking about the governor's latest changes for COVID. So it became a convenient way to communicate that project really well with the community and give them ample opportunity to attend. So that's why we have a hybrid situation now in our council chambers so people can zoom in from wherever they are, and they do. So we try and increase opportunity for participation as well.
Thank you, Don. You had mentioned that you felt like you were meeting too much with the stakeholders. Missy, in your experience as an engineer, and especially on complicated and complex projects, is there ever such thing as meeting too much?
Yes. Oh my gosh. My the general manager, he does like to meet a lot. But you know, I complain about it because I'm focused on like doing the work, and he's more, you know, visionary. So he's always like planning, and you need meetings to plan, right? You need to have everyone involved. So I complain about it, but I think it is good to do. So
What about you, Janelle?
Um, I don't know if the issue, my experience, I don't know if the issue was the frequency. It may have been the time that was taken. So, you know, if we meet once a month, once a day, you know, whatever, and the time is valuable, then yes, I have no problem meeting as many times as necessary. It's when we're not making any progress and we're meeting a lot. And I laughed a little bit because I just had someone who is new to working with me, and she went with me to go meet with the finance director, and it was a 15-minute meeting. We got a lot done in 15 minutes, and she said she's never seen anything like that in her life. And I was like, I don't need a lot of time. I don't need an hour to talk about nothing. We come in, get to it, and I'm done. On to the next one. So, you know, I think that's the thing, is if we are taking the time and we're not using it in a valuable way, then yes, but that's more the issue versus frequency in my experience.
yeah, if I could chime in there too, I find, you know, when I do hold meetings, you know, I make sure that I have an agenda and I know exactly what we're going to be talking about and tracking time, because I have seen meetings where there's a lot of just fluff, and it's like, hey, where is this in our agenda here? And so I think respectfully trying to re or you know, manage everyone's focus on the agenda points is super important. So meetings can be very valuable, but then they can also be a detriment when you're kind of wasting time.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
that is true. Oh, go ahead, Don.
I recall a meeting where I was really driven, and we were meeting with stakeholders in downtown Salinas, and we were creating what we called the Salinas Vibrancy Plan, the Downtown Vibrancy Plan. We were talking about traffic circulation, parking, housing, art and public places, the streetscape, all these details. So I had this agenda with all these bullets on it, and we got to the fourth one, parking, and the whole meeting went sideways. Oh my gosh, did I push a sensitive button? And I was naive about it. I didn't realize what a hot topic it was. So rather than get frustrated, I'm not going to get through my agenda. I said, garage, what do you call that? Put it up on the wall, special meeting just on parking. We're going to get all these people who hate parking downtown, and let's figure it out. And so we just, again, but I was so determined and so driven that nothing was going to keep me from getting to that 5 p.m. deadline until I hit this pothole, if you will. And it just, but it caused me to stop, and we adjusted. And again, we're flexible. So that's an interesting, I don't know why that came to mind, but I don't envy anyone in that position. It's not fun.
I do think that that is relevant, because sometimes the discussions that we have and those frustrations and challenges that we have translate into the end product.
Absolutely.
And right. And so has there ever been, and this is for all three of you, has there ever been an instance where you have seen the challenges between stakeholders, or maybe some inconsistency among leadership, where at the end product, it has all of those issues have actually been realized in the end product, and folks have to start over again? Something to think about.
Right. Well, I had that experience with economic development where my assistant city manager had formed an economic development committee and was putting together what CalEd and GoBiz and everybody thought was a good economic development strategy. And he forgot to ask the city council. And I was pretty much told by the city council that he needed to go away, and they disbanded the committee and they disbanded their whole economic development initiative. So I'm sitting flat right now. I haven't had a director assistant since December, and I'm just not doing anything economic development because I've never seen it happen before, but that's what happened. And obviously I've got my hands full with other concerns. I thought he was going in a good direction, but we forgot to touch bases and got thrown out, got tossed away.
Has there been, and this is for you, Janelle, Missy, as Don mentioned, forgetting to or omitting an important stakeholder in a project. Has there ever been that particular instance for you?
I would say for us, I mean, we typically bring in everyone. Sometimes I like, again, sometimes it's like, why are we having this person in? But I'm sure there's been situations where maybe we're talking about a project that's big ticket item, and it's like, well, why isn't finance in here? We got to do the rate model, and how are we going to pay for this? And it's like, oh yeah, we should have brought them in maybe sooner. I'm sure that has happened. But usually, with our team, there's someone that will bring that up. So that's one other good reason to have a solid team when you are doing these bigger projects, even though maybe you think you can do it on your own, but you never know. Someone has, even if they're not an engineer or like, an engineering project that I'm working on, if you bring someone else in, they might have another idea that you didn't even think about. And it might not be engineering related, but it may like trigger something. So I think that is good to vet your ideas amongst other staff. We on a lot of our big projects, we have like a technical advisory committee. We'll get like key stakeholders involved and go over a project with them. We're looking at redoing our corporation yard here, and so we'll throw out our ideas and some preliminary plans to our TAC. And, they'll come in with these ideas and you're like, oh, wow, I'm so glad we talk, because, they might bring something up that we just didn't even realize. So.
Yeah. Janelle, have you had that experience?
So I haven't, thankfully, haven't had the experience where I've gotten to the end and forgot someone. But and I'm glad Missy went first. I had to actually think about it, because one thing that since I can remember with projects, one of the very first steps is talking about stakeholders. And I'm one of those people who may over invite people to the table, so that someone may have a feeling that their time is being wasted because they're like, why do I need to be here? Does that have anything to do with me? And then we scale back who needs to be there versus cutting people out from the beginning. But I was able to think of one. So when we did this past year and a half, we were working on a reorganization of our organization, where we had to do some department changes, which involved our public works department, recreation department, human services department, our engineering department, and then our water pollution control plan. So the structure of the city changed with those departments. And so, of course, we had all the leadership from those departments involved, and then the second in command of those departments involved as well. But who wasn't involved from the beginning was the HR director, which definitely should have been on from the beginning. She came in, a few months later, which was fine. We hadn't made any decisions, but it was clear as we kept talking, like, wait a minute, we're missing her from this conversation. And then who came on, maybe 6 months after her was the finance director, who we didn't think about at the beginning, which, in hindsight, it's like obvious for me, especially as a finance background, you always need a finance person in the room, no matter what you're doing, because somehow it's going to cost something. And so as we started to get to the point where we were now taking all these, in which, in hindsight, you're like, this is going to happen. You're taking the departments as they are and you're changing them, which means the GL structure is going to have to, all these things are going to have to change. And so we brought him in later, and it probably would have been, though he was brought in at the appropriate time, it probably would have been better for us to tell him when we were going to bring him in, because it became a point where we were like, okay, finance director, I don't know what you got going on, but now we need you to start showing up in this space versus saying to him 6 months earlier, 6 months from now, we're going to need to involve you in this process. So I think that's more the example I have.
Thank you, Janelle. Yeah, I think it's really important when we do bring in stakeholders that they have an expectation of what things are going to look like through the process and what their role is going to be in that as well. So we're going to actually take this time to answer some questions from our attendees. And so for those of you that are on the line and watching, this is your opportunity to send some questions. Please do that in the Q&A feature of the Zoom presentation, and we'll go ahead and ask questions. And all three of you, please feel free to answer. I see a couple of the questions in chat, and I'll move over to the Q&A. Before we do that, I wanted to briefly introduce our hosts who are on the line and helping things behind scenes. Harry Tregenza and Nancy Parchevsky, and they are working in the background on all of our technical stuff and making sure that we're keeping on track here. So thank you for that. So the first question for you, someone asked, how do you promote civility among your council? And I would imagine that for like you, Missy, you have a board that you have to respond to, that would be something in kind.
Yeah, I think we're somewhat fortunate because we just have a 3-member board. So we only have 3 board members to work with. And so our general manager does a really good job. I think, complying with all of the rules, but he does these one-on-ones with them. So they are aware of issues before we take the item to the board. They're not caught off guard. So I think informing them of the issues, beforehand is super important. And sometimes, the board members aren't always going to agree. So if that's what you mean about civility, maybe it's contention between board members, and then just how do you manage that? That's a little bit trickier. Luckily, I'm just the director of engineering, and I don't have to deal with that. But our general manager, I'm sure, could answer that better, one of you all. But I know for us, we're always told, because we whenever we have a project or something that we present, we always do a very elaborate, in-depth PowerPoint of all of the issues. We're trying to figure out, okay, what questions are they going to ask us? But let's tell them before they even ask us. So then at the end of the presentation, they don't really have any questions. And so I think by just feeding them all of the information beforehand, I think that might help in the any issues maybe amongst the council.
Thank you, Missy. Janelle or Dawn, do you have a response for that?
Yeah, I there's a couple ways to deal with it. And just being honest, sometimes the discourse amongst your elected body is something you can't control. I've seen it be so bad that the emotions between council members has nothing to do with us or nothing to do with anything that's going on in the room. It's totally personal. And they could say that today's, Thursday, and it doesn't matter. It's those are fighting words. And so sometimes you have to know when to steer clear of certain situations altogether, because last thing you want to do is get involved in some personal thing that's going on. But besides that, there's a lot you can do. And I think Missy's right. It's having those conversations beforehand. Also, what we do is at our council retreat that we have once a year is we talk about kind of those ground rules and who does the council want to be and how do they want to interact with each other? So it's kind of getting that out in the open, and we go over some of that discourse that's happened, and not specifically calling out incidents, but just talking about what has happened and what the expectation should be and how to work through some of those issues. So besides just talking about the priorities for the upcoming year or the priorities of the last year and where we are, we also talk about how they interact with each other as council members. And it's really important. And then we use that, and at the end of it, they'll have, you know, kind of those rules, and sometimes they'll say the same and sometimes they'll change. But then at the dais, they're printed out. And when there is an issue, I've seen them use that and say, hey, guys, we've agreed that this is how we will act towards one another. And so that has helped kind of diffuse some of those issues. But definitely having communication, just kind of getting ahead of it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That actually, I think, speaks to one of the questions someone asked about, you know, those elected leaders creating challenges from disconnect or having unrealistic expectations. And, you know, how can you do that from a staff level? And definitely preparing them, giving them information ahead of time so that they aren't caught off guard, or there isn't doesn't create an additional discord amongst them. So thank you for that. Another question, there's a lot of questions here about how you're able to collaborate among stakeholders on your big projects. And I know we spoke a little bit about the communication with stakeholders, but what is the collaboration style? I would imagine that this is to mean amongst differing and varying stakeholders.
Style.
I can just jump in and mention, I already mentioned this earlier, but I can kind of maybe talk about it in a different light. We did, for this water main replacement project, we knew this was going to be a huge cost item for the district. I think it's going to be about $500 million over, you know, many decades, but still it's going to be a lot for our small district. Our annual budget's like $25-30 million, and we're going to have to spend quadruple for our water main replacements than we're currently doing. It was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get support from our customers, because they're ultimately going to have to pay for it. And so that's when we did put together this customer advisory committee. And this was the idea of the general manager, because I think at his previous job, he worked for a city, and they were looking at building, or actually going in-house for their police, because I think they were contracted out. And so they ended up putting together this customer advisory committee. And so he's like, oh my gosh, we did it over at my previous job, we should do it here for this project. And so we did, and we ended up let's see, we had 19 CAC members. We had 16 residential members, 3 commercial members, and then we had some ex officio members for institutional. I think there were like 4 different agencies that were big users, like the school district and the park district. And we had like 10 meetings that we discussed this water main replacement program, and what was the best replacement options, and how were we going to fund it? Were we going to pay cash, or were we going to bond? Or, you know, do some debt financing. And so they provided all that input, and we really collaborated well with those CAC members, and ultimately they're our customers. So I think that was a really good tool to see the best, I don't know, the best alternative. I think that would be palatable to our customers.
Thank you. So we have one last question, and I know we have about 5 minutes left. And so, but I think this is an important one, especially given the topic. Someone has asked, what has been one project that you are the most proud of? Let's start with you, Don.
This came up in a job interview a while back, and the former police chief was the recruiter, and she knew I was going to talk about the police station, but I instead talked about the downtown vibrancy plan in Salinas because during COVID it got built. And I've never seen a plan. You know, we always hear stories about plans sitting on shelves collecting dust. In Salinas, it got built, and it's beautiful. And I drive through there every day, and they have a new sign, you know, going across the 200 block. It says Salinas, you know, incorporated, blah blah blah. It looks old fashioned. It matches the Art Deco, and the Rotary Club helped put that up. And it was just such a grassroots project, and the business owners and property owners owned it, that they made darn sure it got built. And so that's just one of those cases where it wasn't pie in the sky. It really happened. And that's part of my legacy. And I'm very proud of that.
Thank you, Don. Missy, Janelle?
My project that I'm most proud of is the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. And it is a project where the organization I was working for was having financial issues, and our forecast was pretty dire. And this happened during COVID. It was the situation before COVID, but then COVID came and it just made it 1,000 times worse quickly. And what I needed to do was convince my general manager, and this was at the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District. I was, as admin services director, I was responsible for human resources, finance, information technology, and public safety. And so these areas were areas that were kind of heightened in their work during that time. And we had to make some real serious decisions that I could see that if we don't make these decisions, we may have to close our doors, which is not an option. And so I had to convince my general manager to take some drastic steps. And then I had to convince our elected body to take drastic steps that they did not want to take. I didn't want to take, but I'm having to work through that. And then after all that work to get them on board is actually to execute. And so I'm not going to go into details of what happened, but I'm extremely proud because though I'm not there anymore, sometimes in our roles, we have to do what's best for an organization, which may not be what's best for the few, and make those hard decisions and put ourselves at risk for people, thinking you're not the right person for the job, because I don't agree with the decision, the question you're asking. But at my core, I knew it was the right thing to do. And I'm extremely proud, one, for having the guts to do it, but then even now that because of that decision, that organization's entire future has been changed. They not only went from pre-COVID of struggling and not knowing if they were going to be able to maintain their assets and pay all their employees into the future. They've got an abundance of a reserve. They're able to do more. It's just a whole different organization. So though the decision in the moment wasn't so focused on gains in the future, it was just on survival that benefited them in a way that they'll, be around forever and continue.
Thank you. Missy?
I know we're almost done with time here, so I'll make it short, but it was probably right when I started at the district. We had a dirt area behind our corporation yard and we wanted to develop it. And so I'm pretty proud of that project because we put together a vision on what we wanted. We had to work with the whole operations crew because they're the ones that were going to be using it, and develop plans and saw the construction all the way through. So it was nice to see that project from beginning to end. And then just the teamwork that we had with everyone. It was great. And then working with our contractors as well. It was a great project.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all three of you for providing us with a tremendous wealth of information and sharing the knowledge that you have with us today on complex projects, on the programs that you have embarked upon and were part of, that you may be able to share with us some insight on some of those complexities that had challenged you in your careers as well. And we are ever so grateful. We do have an evaluation for our attendees to complete that Harry placed in the chat. Please fill out that survey so that we can bring you more great panelists with wonderful information to share. As I mentioned at the top, this was our first panel in the series. Our next is on repairing local agency systems that result in inequities, and we'll put our registration information in the future. Thank you again, panelists. It was a pleasure hearing from you, and we hope to have you back soon.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes our panel session for today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.